All right, welcome to your very own deep dive. You wanted to know more about E. Doc Smith's First Lensman. Buckle up because we're about to blast off on a journey through this classic space opera. We've got excerpts from Wikipedia, a really cool review from fantasy literature, some insights into the whole Lensman series, and we've even got an article from Reactor magazine. So what's our mission? Well, we're going to uncover what makes this book and the whole series so captivating even decades later. And here's the kicker. First Lensman is actually the second book in the series chronologically. But guess what? It was the last one written. It's like a literary time warp, isn't it?
Yeah, Smith created this whole complex universe over decades. He kept adding layers and expanding it. And by writing First Lensman last, it's like he's foreshadowing events from the later books.
Yeah.
And he introduces characters with a depth that wouldn't have been possible otherwise.
Okay, so both Wikipedia and fantasy literature mention triplanetary, and that kicks off the whole timeline. It's where we see the seeds of this galactic conflict, being sown. This deep dive is a direct sequel to that story.
All right, First Lensman throws us right into this universe, where two ancient, super powerful races, the Arisians and the Adorians, are locked in this cosmic struggle. And the Arisians, they're looking for champions to fight the Adorians, so they're manipulating events from behind the scenes, setting the stage for an epic showdown.
It's like we're peeking behind the curtain of the universe and realizing there's this huge cosmic drama going on and humanity is stuck right in the middle. Then we have Virgil Sams. He's the head of the Triplanetary Service, sort of like a United Nations in space. And every source we have says Sams is the one who wants to create the Galactic Patrol, his goal, to unite the entire galaxy under a banner of peace and protection.
Sams is a classic Doc Smith hero. Courageous, decisive, and totally honest. He's the best of humanity. A beacon of hope in a galaxy that's on the edge of chaos.
So think about it. A galactic police force, decades before the Guardians of the Galaxy. Smith was so ahead of his time. And then there's the lens. This device that the Arisians give to people they think are worthy. It's at the heart of the whole series. The Wikipedia excerpts talk about its powers, telepathic communication, enhanced senses, and all these other abilities that Smith only hints at.
The lens isn't just a weapon, though, or a tool. It's a symbol of trust. It shows that the Arisians have faith in their champions. It represents the potential for everyone to work together across the galaxy. And, the fantasy literature review makes a good point. Communication is key for Lensman. Smith knew that communication breakdowns were a big threat, even on a planetary level.
Okay, and we can't forget the other characters. There's Roderick Kinnison, he'll be president of North America, and his son, Jack, a hotshot pilot who's destined for great things. And then there's Conway Costigan, the fearless engineer who's always in the middle of the action. And of course, there's Virgilia Jill Sams, Virgil's daughter, who's just as capable. Oh, and that Reactor magazine review, it really emphasized the belligerent sexual tension between Jack and Jill. They're always fighting, but there's clearly something there. It adds another layer to their characters, and it hints at the Arisians' plan to breed generations that'll lead to the children of the lens. All right, let's hit the main plot points. Sams gets the first lens, starts the Galactic Patrol, recruits alien races like the Nevians. They're these fierce but honorable cat-like warriors. And the Rigilians. They're master geneticists from a really strict society. And all this is happening while they're uncovering the threat of Senator Morgan. He's this power-hungry politician who's tied to organized crime and the shady interstellar spaceways.
What's interesting is that Smith isn't afraid to show corruption, even at the highest levels of power. Morgan represents the dark side of galactic society, people who just want to use and control others for their own gain.
Yeah, and we see that play out in the attack on the Hill. That's the Lensman's secret headquarters. And in Olmsted's undercover mission, where he exposes the intergalactic drug trade. All of our sources describe this really vividly. It's like space opera meets The Wire, but on a galactic scale.
It's just like The Wire. It all comes back to power. Who has it, who wants it, and what they'll do to get it. Smith does a great job weaving all these subplots together. It creates this sense of huge connected galaxy where even small actions can have big consequences.
And those space battles, they're legendary. The fantasy literature review even talks about how huge they are, although it can be hard to picture. I mean, Smith was writing before CGI, so he could only use words to describe these massive fleets, clashing across light years.
He did a fantastic job, though. His descriptions are so full of energy and excitement, you can really feel the scale of these conflicts. He pushed the boundaries of what science fiction could do.
And then there's Roderick Kinnison, running for president, which adds a whole other layer to the story. He's not just fighting space pirates, he's fighting for civilization itself.
His campaign isn't just about winning an election. It's about upholding the ideals of the Galactic Patrol. Justice, freedom, cooperation. It shows that the fight for civilization happens on many fronts: military, political, and moral.
No. The fantasy literature reviewer does point out something. Some scientific inaccuracies and plot holes, like the distances between stars aren't always consistent, and some of those battle formations, well, they're almost impossible to imagine.
Right, but we have to remember when Smith was writing, we didn't know as much about astronomy back then. And he was more focused on telling a thrilling story than getting every scientific detail perfect.
It's like watching those old sci-fi movies. With the cardboard spaceships and shaky sets, they might look a little silly now, but the stories are still captivating.
Exactly. And even with those flaws, the fantasy literature reviewer admits that First Lensman is brilliant. The ideas are still mind-blowing. A galactic police force, interstellar drug smuggling, even a U.S. president who has to wear a lens, to be honest. It makes you wonder, could something like that actually work in our world? Or would it cause more problems? It really gets you thinking about power and trust.
Imagine that, the lens, making our politicians tell the truth. It brings up so many questions, like what about privacy? Could someone manipulate the lens? Smith really makes us think about honesty and leadership.
And besides all those thought-provoking questions, there's just the pure fun of it all. The crazy aliens, the narrow escapes, those epic battles across entire star systems. Smith was a master of pulp science fiction. And First Lensman's a perfect example.
He really encourages us to dream big, to imagine a future where humanity has reached the stars. And even though that future is full of danger, there's always hope, always a chance to make things better.
That's a key takeaway from First Lensman and the whole Lensman series. It's about good triumphing over evil. But it's also about human ingenuity and courage and working together.
So we've talked about the plot, the characters, the themes, even some of the criticisms. But what does it all mean for you, the listener? Why should you care about a book that was written so long ago?
That's the big question, isn't it? The answer is in the book's legacy, the ideas that Smith introduced. A galactic police force, advanced technology, fighting corruption across the galaxy. These ideas have inspired so many writers and filmmakers.
The Reactor magazine and Wikipedia articles both talk about that, how influential First Lensman has been. It's like the blueprint for so many space operas we love. Star Wars, Star Trek, Guardians of the Galaxy. You can see Smith's influence all over them. And it's not just the ideas, it's that feeling of how big everything is, the whole scope of the story. The way Smith mixes science fiction with action and adventure to make you feel like you're really there. He really set a high standard for space opera. And we can still see his influence today.
First Lensman might have its flaws, but it's still a groundbreaking work of science fiction, and it keeps inspiring and entertaining people. Even now, it's a must-read for any sci-fi fan, a real testament to the power of imagination.
Absolutely. And this is just the start of the Lensman saga. The story goes on in Galactic Patrol and the other books in the series. Each one builds on what happens in First Lensman.
Yeah. Which means there's so much more we could talk about.
Yeah.
But before we go there, I think there's something else to consider. The lens is all about trust and communication, being able to connect with people on a deeper level. What if it could also make people face their own biases, their prejudices?
That's an interesting thought, especially these days. When everything feels so divided, could something like the lens actually help bring people together? That's something to think about.
Definitely. And it shows how powerful Smith's writing is. He was dealing with issues that are still important today. Corruption, power struggles, the need for cooperation on a global scale, even a galactic scale. He used science fiction to explore those issues.
Yeah.
And he created a story that people are still thinking about.
Yeah. That was our deep dive into First Lensman. It was a wild ride through a galaxy full of wonder, danger, and amazing heroes. But it's also a story that makes you think, makes you ask questions, and leaves you wanting more.
That's what makes great science fiction. It's not just about escaping reality. It's about using your imagination to explore what it means to be human, the good and the bad.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for coming along on this journey, and a huge thank you to you, the listener, for requesting this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful, fun, and maybe even a little mind-blowing. Now, we want to hear from you. What did you think of First Lensman? Did it give you any new ideas, any questions? Share your thoughts, and keep exploring the Lensman saga. Until next time, keep diving deep, and never stop asking questions